Imagine you had two fathers growing up. One is a brilliant academic, super educated, but he struggled with money his whole life. The other? He's an 8th grade dropout who ended up becoming one of the richest men in Hawaii. Sounds like a movie, but it's the real story behind the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it all boils down to a choice between two completely different ways of thinking about money.
And here is the core conflict, right on the screen. Poor Dad always said the love of money is the root of all evil. But Rich Dad's perspective was the total opposite. The lack of money is the root of all evil. So at just 9 years old, the author, Robert Kiyosaki, had to figure out which one of these powerful, conflicting ideas was going to shape his entire life.
So yeah, this sets up the big theme of the book, these two paths. It's like that famous poem, two roads in a wood, and the one you pick makes all the difference. For Kiyosaki, it was a choice between his poor dad's world of job security and his rich dad's world of financial freedom.
Now, let's be really clear. His poor dad wasn't some failure. I mean, the man had a PhD. He was the head of education for the state of Hawaii. His whole philosophy was get good grades, find a safe, secure job, and climb that corporate ladder. His rich dad, on the other hand, the guy who didn't even finish middle school, was busy building a business empire. So the conflict wasn't just about cash, it was about two totally different mindsets for how you live your life.
You know, the boys' first attempt at making money was, well, let's just say it was illegal. They literally started counterfeiting nickels by melting down old lead toothpaste tubes. And while both dads, of course, shut that down immediately, it was the poor dad's reaction that was so interesting. He actually said, most people only talk and dream of getting rich. You've done something. That idea that taking action, even if it's a failed action, is what matters, becomes a huge part of Rich Dad's lesson.
Okay, let's dive into the absolute core lesson from Rich Dad. This is the foundation for everything else in the book. Seriously, if you only take one thing away from this whole explainer, this should probably be it.
This right here is the huge paradigm shift. The poor and middle class, they're often trapped in what the book calls the rat race. You know the drill, you work for a paycheck, you use that paycheck to pay your bills, then you realize you need a bigger paycheck, and the whole cycle just repeats over and over. Rich Dad's whole goal was to teach the boys how to get out of that trap by learning how to make money work for them, so they wouldn't have to work for it forever.
So how do you make money work for you? Simple, by buying assets. And Rich Dad's definition just cuts through all the complicated financial talk. Forget what your accountant says for a second. An asset is just something that puts money in your pocket. That's it. Simple as that.
And on the flip side, of course, you have liabilities. These are the things that take money out of your pocket. The secret to getting wealthy, according to Rich Dad, is to spend your life buying assets and keeping liabilities to a minimum. Sounds easy, right? Well, here's where it starts to get a little controversial for some people. And this is the line that just floors most people. We're all taught that buying a home is our biggest asset. But if we use Rich Dad's simple definitions, does your house put money in your pocket every month? Nope. It actually takes money out of your pocket through the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, repairs, you name it. So through this very specific lens, your own home is actually a liability.
This really highlights the key difference in behavior. The middle class often spends their hard-earned income on liabilities that they think are assets. You know, a fancier car, the newest phone, things that lose value and cost money to maintain. The rich, on the other hand, use their income to buy true income-producing assets. That's the whole game. This leads us right into Rich Dad's next big lesson. When he says mind your own business, he doesn't mean you have to go quit your job and become an entrepreneur tomorrow. What he means is you need to be building up your asset column. See, your job, your profession, that's how you get income. Your business is what you do with that income to buy assets.
And Kiyosaki and his friend Mike put this into practice perfectly. They were working for free at this little convenience store, and they noticed that the comic book guy would just throw away the old, unsold comics. So they asked if they could have them set up a library in Mike's basement and then charge the other neighborhood kids 10 cents to come in and read as many comics as they wanted. Just like that, they had created a tiny business, an asset, that made them money even when they weren't physically there. So what was the crucial lesson here? It was that they had created a system. That little comic book library was their first real taste of financial independence. It was a business that worked for them, which started to free them from having to rely only on a paycheck.
So, what kind of real assets should you be looking for? Well, the book lists a few big ones. Things like businesses that don't need you to be there 24/7, stocks, bonds, real estate that actually pays you every month,
or even royalties from things like books or music. You see the pattern, right? They're all systems or investments that make money for you without you having to trade your time for it.
This whole idea of acquiring assets leads directly into another really powerful model from the book. It's called the cash flow quadrant, and you can think of it like a map that shows the 4 different ways people earn their money.
But before I show you the quadrant, just take a second and think about this for yourself. How do you make your money? Is it from a job? Do you work for yourself? Does it come from investments? Just knowing where you are on the map is the first step.
All right, here it is. It's pretty simple. The E is for employee. You have a job. The S stands for self-employed or small business owner. You basically own your job. B is for a big business owner. You own a system and people work for you. And finally, I is for investor. Your money is what works for you.
The really important distinction here is between the left side and the right side of this quadrant. People on the left side, the employees and the self-employed, are basically trading their time for money. If they don't work, they don't get paid. People on the right side, the business owners and investors, they own systems and assets that generate income pretty much automatically. And according to Rich Dad, the whole goal is to move from the left side of the quadrant over to the right.
But moving from left to right, it's not just about learning some new technical skills. The book makes a really strong argument that it's mostly about overcoming the mental and emotional hurdles that keep us stuck where we are.
And the 2 biggest emotions that keep us spinning on that hamster wheel are fear and greed. Think about it. The fear of not having enough money to pay your bills, that's what gets you up in the morning and forces you to go to work. But then, as soon as you get that paycheck, desire, or greed, kicks in. You want a nicer car, a bigger house, a better vacation, so you spend it all. And that cycle is what keeps you totally dependent on your job, always chasing that next paycheck. Escaping the trap really comes down to the choices you make every single day. The book says that every single dollar you get is like a vote for the kind of future you want. You can choose to spend it on liabilities, and that's a vote to stay poor or in the middle class. Or you can choose to spend it on assets, and that's your vote to become rich. The power really is in those small, daily decisions.
And that brings us right back to the beginning, to that fundamental choice. See, Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't just a book about financial strategies. It's a book about 2 completely different ways to live. One is that well-worn path of job security, a path that's usually guided by fear. And the other is the road less traveled, the one that leads to financial freedom, built on a foundation of financial education. So the book lays out the map for you. The only question left is, which path are you on, and is it really the one you want to be on?